Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. This week, I was very troubled by a situation that happened. It was not a big situation, but it was between me and another person, and I couldn't resolve it. And it bothered me, and I kept thinking of it over and over. I lost sleep. I got worried. I got anxious about it. And I started imagining scenarios that didn't even exist. What would happen in the future? What was this meant for this? What this meant for that? And none of that had actually happened. And all the scenarios, of course, were bad. And don't look at me like that. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have fallen into that trap. So anxiety happens in our life, and it happens when things are unexpected and we're not expecting it. We're not prepared for it, and it's out of our control. I should change that. It's out of our illusion of being in control. So we start thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when I get older? What's going to happen if I'm alone? What's going to happen this? What's going to happen that? And before you know it, we're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Our heart is palpitating, and we can't sleep. And we worry about it. It took me probably 2 days before I actually turned to the Bible for guidance in this specific situation. So I turned to the verse that most of you probably know, that I have memorized, Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7, where Paul says, do not be anxious about anything. I know that verse. I know basically the whole part, that whole portion. I have it in my mind. I memorized it many years ago, but I turned to it again. And I thought about it, and I said to myself, you know what? Do not be anxious about anything. That sounds great. It sounds wonderful. But it's sort of like telling a hungry dog not to eat the food in their dish, their favorite dish, by the way, and leaving the dog alone in the room. You know what's going to happen. The food's not going to be there. So telling someone, don't be anxious about anything, is kind of mean almost, because we can't stop being anxious. So I got out my Bible. I turned to Philippians chapter 4, read 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition. But then I decided to read a few verses before and the verses that come after it. And they make all the difference in the world. They actually tell us how not to be anxious and give us 3 very specific things or truths that we can apply in our life. Now, of course, we're studying the life of Paul, and Paul is in prison. And this is not like a modern prison where you have a television, you get meals, you get an exercise place. It's a terrible thing to be in prison in those days. He has some benefits, but it's not a good position to be in. They want to kill him. He doesn't know if he's going to live another month, another week, another year. He has no idea. So he's in he has no control whatsoever. And so he's in a very dangerous situation that's dangerous and most likely to cause anxiety. And yet he says, do not be anxious about anything. So instead of reading Philippians 4, 6, and 7, which we will do tomorrow, we're going to look at Philippians chapter 4, verse 4 and 5. Here it is. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. He says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Rejoice. The root is joy. It's having joy, rejoicing, having joy, expressing joy. But when you're in prison, how do you do that? I know how you do it. You don't focus on your circumstances. He doesn't say rejoice in your circumstances. He says rejoice in the Lord always. So no matter what your circumstances are, rejoice in the Lord. It's not like a fake kind of rejoicing. It's you're rejoicing in the Lord. You're not rejoicing because you're in prison. You're not rejoicing because you got a bad diagnosis. You're not rejoicing because someone died. You're not rejoicing because you have a disagreement with somebody else. That's the circumstance. But you're rejoicing in the Lord because the Lord has not changed. His love for you has not changed. His faithfulness has not changed. We can rejoice in the Lord because of his character. So if I focus in the midst of my circumstances on the Lord's character, I can rejoice in the Lord, not in my circumstances. I don't rejoice in that, but I rejoice in the Lord. And that joy that I have from the Lord will be my strength, and it'll raise me up above the waters. So rejoice in the Lord, in him, always. And he says it again for emphasis. Rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord. So that's the first step, so to speak. Shift your focus from the circumstances to the Lord. Maybe you'll want to read verses about God's character, read his word, who he is, what he has done, and you before you know it, you'll start rejoicing in the Lord. Then he says, let your gentleness be evident to all. Gentleness, that's a fruit of the Spirit. Gentleness, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. Gentleness. Let your gentleness be evident to all. It's a behavior. Be gentle to people. And there have been many studies that show when we behave a certain way, many times our emotions follow us. For example, I don't feel like doing something, but I start doing it and my emotions catch up. When you're in grief, you don't feel like getting out of bed, but you get out of bed and your emotions start to catch up. So behavior goes first, emotions follow. So be gentle, because when you're anxious, you're not gentle. So change your behavior. Be gentle with everybody. Let it be evident to everybody. Peaceful, gentle, and your emotions will follow. Peace in your heart will follow. And finally, he says, the Lord is near. The Lord is near. Remind yourself, the Lord is near. And that reminds me of Psalm 34:18, which says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. You see, when we are the most broken in our life, God is the closest. We all know the footprints in the sand. When there were no footprints, when there were only one set of footprints, it's because God was carrying you. God is close to you in those times of distress, in those times of anxiety, when you feel crushed, when you feel like your world is falling apart. The Lord is close. That's a statement of fact. And then it says in Psalm 34, the rest of the verse, the righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. He'll lift you above your troubles. The Lord is near. And that's a word for some of you today. The Lord is near. You're brokenhearted. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. So, my friends, apply those steps And then you'll get to tomorrow where you'll understand how we can do not be anxious in anything. So God bless you, and I look forward to continuing with you tomorrow.